TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark savage!
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff!
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? You heard the man. This is the TruthSeekah podcast. I'm your host, TruthSeekah, joined with Kerry Cassidy. Tonight is my guest. I'm excited to have her on. Before we jump on into the interview, I got to say a quick thank you to everybody who's supporting my work at Patreon.com. You guys enable me to do this for a living. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There's different levels of giving where you can sign up there if you want to support my work and extra podcasts, all of my music, exclusive offers. I got a bunch of new music over there. So make sure you head on over there to check out the work. I'm going to keep this short. Head on over to Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. As I said, Kerry Cassidy has joined me tonight. When it comes to people who have inspired me and influenced me to be doing what I'm doing right now, I think that there's people who have come along on my path that have influenced me to the point that I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm reaching a lot of people. There's a lot of people who resonate with my music. I wouldn't be doing a podcast. I wouldn't be doing music about the esoteric and spiritual subjects if it wasn't for a handful of people. I could definitely count these people on two hands. Jordan Maxwell, Manly P. Hall, Michael Tsarion, James Gilliland, and there's a few others, but along that list, there comes someone by the name of Kerry Cassidy. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an honor to speak with you again. How you doing, Kerry Cassidy?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing great. Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. You have a bunch of fans. There's a bunch of people here coming from your channel and from the Facebook, and they're hanging out in the chat room as well. So let everybody know if you guys want to call in. We're going to have the phone lines open here towards the end of the show. The number streaming across the top of the platform and along the bottom as well. So if anybody wants to call in, you guys feel free to do that. I'm excited about this interview. Thank you for having me on your show. I was on your show just a couple weeks ago and had a great response from a lot of people who tune in to the Project Camelot universe. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
When it comes to getting into the stuff that you cover, it is a wide range of topics, usually having to do with spirituality, ET contact, aliens, secret space program, these type of things. What got you into that stuff? Because I think many of us who are into this type of work, there's something that happened usually when we were children or teenagers. We got in, whether it was the paranormal, the occult, seeing UFOs. Was there some type of defining moments that you had when you was a kid that got you into this type of work?
Well, I was abducted. I can say that. I had a lot of contact in the unseen world, I guess you want to call it. And I have various memories that tell me that was going on, now when I look back. But I can also say that I thought reality was kind of boring. And so immediately I started reading tons of books and trying to explore the world that way. And also I was just really aware of being part of an unseen world. So, and then on top of it, I have these memories of having been abducted. I have a sort of a nightmare that I had, a recurring nightmare up until I was around 12 years old. I've said it before, but it was a loud buzzing sound. I would be walking out my front door down a pathway to what was a white picket fence, even though we didn't have a white picket fence in front of my house. And on the other side of the fence was a guy with a top hat and an overcoat. And everything was dark, and I was very terrified. And then I would wake up right when I got to the gate. And then finally, when I got to be 12 years old, I actually went through the gate at one point, and then the nightmares stopped. I used to be afraid of Santa Claus, unlike kids that, because I heard that he came in a sleigh through the sky on a roof and then landed on your roof. Well, I guess that sounded like an UFO or ET experience to me. Although we didn't talk about that back when I was a kid. I mean, that wasn't in the literature really at the time. And so, yeah, it was probably that stimulated me. I know when I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind that I was like, yes, finally, someone's talking about this and it's real. And I was like, it was practically a religious experience for me, because that was the first kind of mainstream thing that I remember, at least in my brain. I also went to Ames Research Lab I was born in Palo Alto in Moffett Field Hospital, and that's a military hospital. I was the only kid in my family born there. And I seemed to have some special abilities as a result of having been dealt with there. I also have a really weird birthmark that covers most of my right shoulder. That is strange, and I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, so many questions just out of that little bit of stuff. But I mean, I understand if you are into these different topics, that would be the reason why you have these encounters, you have these experiences. Nobody's talking about them. If you go to school and talk about them, or there's relatives around you talk about them, you're ostracized, you're laughed at times, or whatever the case is. And so to find podcasts now, I think everybody's doing this type of work and stuff. So when I was going through my awakening and having crazy stuff happening to me, starting to see ships, Project Camelot is where it was, and it creates a safe haven. And judging by all the people watching now, they have somebody to talk to where they don't have to freak out and think that they're the only ones who are seeing this stuff, that I can't talk about it, or people are going to judge me. You're probably going to get judged, but at the same time, there's a safe haven, a community, if you will, of people who embrace this stuff and willingly talk about it. So whenever you've seen those television shows, Close Encounters, things like that, it lets you know that, first of all, I'm not alone. Somebody thought of this movie, for one. And then two, one of the things I wanted to ask you about from that story, you talk about the men with the top hat. Does that have anything to do with people seeing the shadow figures of the men with the top hat in their room wearing the trench coat? Is that connected at all?
Well, I couldn't say. I mean, in my dream, that was a real person or whatever. It does resemble the Men in Black scenario. So I kind of get it. I believe I was mylabbed. And then I had further evidence of that when I met Norm Bergram, who I interviewed regarding the ring makers of Saturn, the ships around Saturn. And he's quite an elderly man when I interviewed him. So he was, I think it was 83 or 85. And then he disappeared completely off the scene. And my interview is the only one he ever did. At the time, he thought he was going to start going public, but he was going to start also, he had been given a new lab by a group of men, and he was very excited. And I knew the writing was on the wall right then, that I'd probably, that he would disappear, but he didn't know that. He lived in Palo Alto in a big house that he had, I think, built, and his wife had passed on. He was smart as a whip, and he basically talked about working underground in Moffett Field in the secret space program for his whole life. And I'm sure they took him back to work for them. So what can I say? In my experience, it all kind of culminated because I got into Project Camelot, because I created Project Camelot. I was drawn to investigate these things. I actually, I worked in Hollywood for 20 years, and then I became and I was trying to make films and break into the sort of, the big boys network. But I was never kiss ass the way you need to kind of be. I grew up in Northern California, so I was always a rebel. But I did write screenplays and try to shop them around Hollywood, and eventually became an independent producer. I went to film school, and then I reached this glass ceiling where I couldn't go any further. I was pitching projects, packaging them, and trying to get them off the ground in Hollywood. And then I, in order to make money, of course, to stay alive, I was working as a contractor to JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab. And this was for a few years. And I worked in media. And I was very aware on a psychic level that there were a lot of Black projects going on there. I was investigating nonstop on the internet at that point. And I was also writing sci-fi screenplays on my lunch hour. So, in other words, it kind of all built up to me creating Camelot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything just kind of reaching a pinnacle for that defining moment to kind of leave your mark on history, if you will, as well. When we're talking about dealing with abduction, so I don't know, much about your story of the abductions, but especially when you mention my lab. So are we talking about ETs abducting you? But when we're talking about the whole my lab thing, I think the government's involved with that as well. Do you want to talk about what type of entities were taking you or
I don't know. I know that I had interaction with Greys, but I don't, because I have a dislike for them in general. And I also have had dreams in which various ETs, I've had various ETs show up in my dreams. So actually quite a gamut. What can I say? The My Lab has to do with, Moffett Field, the military hospital, the fact that when I went to Ames Research Lab and in Palo Alto as a kid on a field trip, I recognized it. There was just a lot of things going on regarding that. And this is the military side. However, if you listen to the interviews I've done with Melinda Leslie, who has investigated my labs extensively, as well as other kinds of abductions, etc., she talks about how there are ETs working with the military on the abductions. And I do believe that I was genetically enhanced. So whether I was enhanced, before I was born was probably the case. I tend to think that my birthmark is the result of them maybe screwing up or doing something to me that made the birthmark. I was born with it. And then I can just say that, so it's not just the military. The military has been working with ETs for a long time on these genetic programs to enhance humanity and so on.
You mentioned having a psychic knowing about maybe different situations or just this inner intuition. I've noticed that with contact, comes these heightened senses of awareness. Well, I don't know if it comes through the contact or it releases something within you that's already there. And so have you had any of those encounters whenever you were younger, like knowing the next song that's going to come on the radio? I know that's something small, but it usually starts with some stuff like that. Have you had those encounters when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I was very, very aware of what we call the unseen world. I also, would see ghosts and can see ghosts. Even now, I try to screen it out. I get visitations and things. I know when somebody's remote viewing me, I have prophetic dreams that come true. But I also did this thing while I was right out of college. I went into meditation for like a few months at a time and decided to connect all my chakras, and I had a Kundalini awakening. And since then I've had multiple Samadhi experiences, and those I would attribute a lot of my psychic ability that's grown, sort of expanded over the years. And but I would say abductions do trigger that. It also, I can turn lights off as street lights or turn them on, or I have evidence of affecting the TSA scanners. I've mentioned that before, and in airports. And I've also affected some machinery where in front of other people. So, it wasn't so much that I intended to do that. It's kind of started to, just manifest. Yeah. So it was always kind of, I had some weird abilities as I grew up for a long time that I was aware of that other people didn't seem to have, knowing things that I wasn't supposed to know, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Talking about this stuff openly, I know you were talking about some people can be targeted and things like that. I've been having this conversation a lot lately, especially when I'm in the Bible Belt. I'm in Alabama, right? And so I'm talking about psychic abilities, UFO contact, all of this stuff openly in conversation. I was working a full-time regular job, and I had my Facebook page was public for everybody to see it. And all of my friends warned me, dude, don't talk about this stuff. They're going to think you crazy. I've talked about, psychedelic adventures and things like that I've had. And I said, look, if your boss finds out about this, or if this person, that person, your mother-in-law, whatever, you're going to be in trouble. You want to keep that private. But it was always this inward knowing, like, if you was privileged to this information, why would you want to keep it away from everybody and just keep it secretive to yourself, especially when other people are struggling? I look at the way I found, your work and what it did for me. So maybe somebody can find my story and my work, and they will feel like they're not alone, or feel like they're not crazy, or whatever the case is. But talk a little bit about that, because there's so many people who are still scared to, like, yeah, I'm not ready to come out with the information yet. They're not ready for the backlash. Talk a little bit about speaking about this stuff, especially, I think you come from a place where it wasn't so widely accepted. Now everybody has a podcast. You were kind of like a forerunner in many respects. So if you can talk a little bit about that, if we should keep it in, if we should do podcasts and talk about this stuff openly in front of thousands of people. I mean, what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm an advocate of that, being open about all of it. When we started Camelot, in fact, most people didn't even know what a whistleblower was. They just thought a whistleblower was somebody, in like big tobacco or something that was a corporation, a person in a corporation. They didn't understand that there was the Matrix movie did come out quite a number of years ago, and I think before Camelot. So, it seems like that really kind of told the story about what we're living in. But I studied Eastern philosophy growing up, and they always talk about Maya and illusion and how this reality is an illusion, etc. And the idea that it's a hologram is in keeping with that notion. So it never seems strange to me. In fact, I always think truth is stranger than fiction. And I've sort of lived by that. I'm very fortunate in that I had very unusual parents. They were not joiners. They didn't, follow the neighborhood or any of that stuff. And they were just completely individualistic, and they did what they wanted and thought what they wanted. And they were both very intelligent. And no, lay down. And they, my father was self-employed and would never work for anyone else. And that was completely bizarre back when I was growing up. That was not considered normal by any means. And my mother, would go to James Brown concerts by herself because my father didn't like it. No, sorry, I have my cat and dog. I'm going to have to deal with them.
Okay, you can. I could take it if you want to go ahead and get them.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, just saying that, being honest about who you are and really, I was just talking to a friend of mine about how it's really more important to change society than it is to change the individual. The individuals are where innovation comes from and change, and society is like that square hole that you want to put a round peg into. And so everything to do with therapy and psychology has to do with fitting humans into the square sort of hole and becoming a cog in a machine. So that's always been philosophically, Ivan gets that. So I got to go. Hold on.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, the funny thing with that is I've been hearing that a lot lately, especially today. I was actually listening to the Joe Rogan podcast today, and they were talking about how should you try to change society or change the individual? And Joe had a philosopher and someone who's well researched in the medical industry and the psychiatric industry as well, and he was talking about one said this, one said that, and Joe was saying that we could have the personal enlightenment, we can have the personal revelation to better yourself and whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're going through. And then if enough people have the personal enlightenment and better themselves, then it's going to change us as a collective. And then so there was just, should we try to deal with each person where they are, or change the laws, change the way that we look at food, change the way that we look at society, or just on the individual level? And so I honestly think it's both. I think that we should try to change society as a whole, but then on the personal revelation, the personal journey ourselves, as we change ourselves, we're going to begin to deal with the people that's around us. We're going to begin to start podcasts and movements and things like that. That's going to touch a actual much wider audience. So dealing with the micro and the macro with it all, I think it's all powerful and all comes into play.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's important to realize that humanity is living in basically a slave system and on this earth. So for the most part, society absolutely change it, but you have to, that's my point. The individual is going to change themselves and going to evolve and re-evolve back to source. That's the journey. But in the end of the day, the prison around us are the institutions and the politics, every institution you can think of, religion being a gigantic one. These are the things that need to change. Individuals are bringing gifts with them, and it's very important to allow for that. So I'm a big advocate of that. I studied social change in college, actually, because I'm all about a change in the world. So changing society is really the name of the game there.
Before we went live, I asked you if any topic was off the table, if there's anything that I shouldn't bring up, I shouldn't mention. I don't know if you've addressed this at all. I am familiar with your work 100%, but I haven't heard you address this at all if you have. But and this was the same thing. I had some other friends say, yeah, don't bring that up. She may get offended if you bring that up, whatever the case. I said, you know what? I'm not going to say this to offend her, but I'm going to say this because I'm genuinely curious as a fan of Project Camelot, of somebody who has consumed hours and hours of your work. So when I got into ufology, one of the big people I found right off the bat was Dr.Steven Greer. And I followed everything he said, hook, line, and sinker. I really enjoyed the CE5 initiative and the contact experience and all of that stuff that he brought out. Also the work of James Gilliland, which was very similar. And then I seen the interview that you did with Stephen Greer, and I really enjoyed his work. And you two kind of went at it for maybe an hour and a half or so, just going back and forth about all ETs are good versus you can't just categorize them as all good, even though we would like to believe that they were all good. And so you went back and forth with him for a while. Can you talk a little bit about that at all? Have you spoke about that at all? Have you come across?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's no problem. I get interviewed quite a lot, and once in a while people do ask me about that interview. What happened at the time was, we went to the Barcelona conference. We were invited to chair a panel that was actually, I guess, a press conference with the speakers. And so that was back in the day when Bill Ryan was my partner in Camelot. And we also had a witness, Henry Däniken, who came out under his own name about a month before that in another conference that happened in Switzerland. And he was invited by the organizers of the Barcelona conference. His real name is Arthur Neumann. Mm-hmm. And he had given testimony to Camelot, was one of our first major witnesses. And he had never shown up in person until this time when he went to this one conference. And so then what happened was he went on stage when Bob Dean was on stage, and he announced that he had been working on Mars, and basically, said a few things. And I went on stage with him for moral support. This was just a split second decision on his part, but no. God, I'm sorry. This is just crazy. Usually this is not such a problem, so I'll try closing that door. So anyway, and so we interviewed. Actually, it was Alfred Weber and Bob Dean and Henry Däniken, and we all were backstage doing in this little sort of cubbyhole area where they allowed you to do interviews. And we just stopped, finished that interview, and Stephen Greer walked in with his entourage and sat down in one of the chairs and just said, "I'm ready for my interview." And I didn't.
Is that how that interview started?
Yep.
Okay.
And I warned him ahead of time. I just said, "Look, we don't get along," because what had happened was he had intimidated a lot of the free energy activists at the conference, and some people think there could have been a riot, but there wasn't. He also did something strange that Arthur Neumann was not too pleased about, and I don't know what transpired. I just know something did. And then on top of it, he went on stage and lied to the audience, and there was about 1,500 people there. And he said something like I can't remember, it's been many years, but it was something, I think I say it in the interview, but I think it was all ETs are good or something. Mm-hmm. And then there was another lie that was like another bald-faced lie. And, it's important to know that as above, so below, that we live with a number of, zillions of races, really, of beings of all kinds. And some are good and some are not. There's service to self, service to others. Some are, most of them are mixtures of that, but some are definitely negatively inclined towards humans. And it is very dangerous, in my view, to mislead humans in this way. Yeah. So, I figure that he's lying. I know that he works with the CIA. I also know that he is, I'm not going to go any further on that. So basically, I told him before the interview that I didn't want to interview him. Bill wanted to interview him. So we decided okay, here he is. He wants to be interviewed. And I'd actually gone on to one of the Facebook or something the night before and actually called him out on his 2 lies. And I think that's what propelled.
That's what I picked up. Yeah.
And initially we had invited him for an interview, but he never agreed to it. So by the time I got to the conference and saw how he behaved, which was quite interesting, I decided I did not want to interview him. So that's how that started. And I'd do it again today if I was forced to, be in the same room with him and discuss these things.
So you haven't
I said
you haven't crossed paths with him since then, any conferences or nothing like that?
no, not face to face. I haven't dealt with him at all.
You mentioned that he could be making it all up. I don't know if it's.
No, he's not making it up. We're actually in agreement on many, many things. It's just that, number one, he's not educating the CIA or the secret space program. And that's, he's got a lot of, he's got a lot of sort of confusion, let's say, going on in his head. And he's also misleading people. It's very dangerous, when humans are being abducted and children are being taken off our planet and used as slaves and eaten, and their fluids being used and genetically re-engineered, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the list just goes on. And to tell people, to basically get them to take down their guard, and also to call gray ships in is not a skill. In my opinion.
Yeah.
So, I don't agree with the way he conducts himself. No.
So dealing with the good and the bad and things like that, the good ETs, the bad ETs, we're seeing ships, all of the stuff's going on. I've definitely seen it to where, the ETs or whoever's running the globe right now, kind of like as you said, they have our malicious they have malicious intent. Like I said, the slave systems, and they want us for our energy, and we're like the oil that kind of makes their machine work. And we've seen videos in the past of like these ships that are coming in close to the planet, and there's like plasma beams being shot out at these ships and things like that. I know this is still making it very simple and making it very ABC, but the way I see it is that the bad guys are here running the planet and everything that we have going on, and it seems like the good guys are out there watching over us, maybe the angels from the ancient texts and things like that. Is that safe to say, or is it just like a warfare? It's a little bit of everything that's kind of taking place above our heads, the good, the bad, the people who are the ETs that are neutral and things like that. What is going on,
Well, it is a war of worlds, and I will say a lot of the good ETs do come here, as well as, are involved in safeguarding our planet. If you look at the interviews I've done with Ashiana Dean, you'll see she talks about the Guardians, and the Guardians are a group of various races that have all sort of banded together to safeguard the human genome and the human experiment here on planet Earth. So they're definitely watching over us and backing us when possible. However, they have a policy of non-intervention. So in order for them to do something, they have to have a gesture by the dark side, the way it works for them. So the dark side does something, they are able to then to take a stance at that point. And most of the time, they also don't intervene. They'd rather work through a human who is, working with them in a conscious way, and then counteract the negative, things that go on. And so, you can have something like, for example, we were driving in Switzerland with this old Audi station wagon that Bill had at the time, and we drove to the top of the Alps up a really steep, winding road. And we got to the very top, and we pulled into a parking lot, slowed down in the way you drive in a parking lot, going quite slow. And all of a sudden, one of our wheels fell off, and he had the car checked out, by a mechanic before we left for Switzerland, et cetera. And it had been sliced through. The mechanic said it was just sliced through. And so, that was sabotage, I guess you could call it. But had it happened when we were on the cliffs on the way up, I don't know, how would I be here today? I really don't know. But you see, what happens is, I would say there's an intervention. So we still get some of the, negativity that happened, but at the same time, it's like most of it just goes by the wayside. So I think this is a lot of times the way they intervene. And I've seen other evidence of this as well. They do lots of really interesting things to deal with the dark side.
Okay.
And it's an interesting balance. But, there are unseen beings here as well all the time besides ETs. There are, there's a vested interest in having this genome, this seeding, as we call it, of humanity, make it through. And we've already become an ascension planet since 2012. So, this is an ongoing game, if you want to call it. And it's definitely a war of worlds, for all intents and purposes.
How can we know that that the interaction that we're having, like individuals, we're talking about the Disclosure Project, all of this stuff. I personally believe that disclosure is going to start just with people having encounters and experiences and kind of waking up to the truth of who they are and having this knowledge and of things that's happened to them as a kid, whether it's suppressed information or dreams or whatever the case is. But when we're out there, like I've had a lot of sightings, and I felt like I've connected with the ships. They've stopped, they've blinked, they've shot beams, just insane stuff, just to let you know that that they know that like that's the information, whether it's communicating telepathically or whatever. You feel like you're in touch with the divine. You feel like you're in touch with something angelic. You leave with a sense of creativity, of bliss, of awe and wonder. You want to create, you want to write a song, whatever the case is. And so this is how it is actually inspired me and impacted me. But how do we know that we're in touch with the ETs or the angelic beings or whatever that have our best interest in mind? Is there a checklist? Do we just set that good intention when we go out there? Like, should we even be doing that? I mean, what would you say to that?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily invite the ships in, as a lot of these people like to do, because they're mostly grays. It's important to know that a lot of the ETs, and especially the negative side, are what we call 4D beings. They don't necessarily go beyond that dimension, and they do use craft. A lot of the more developed 6-dimensional and above will come, a lot of them have left bodies behind, so they no longer have a physical body, so they'll manifest as light beings. That can be deceptive as well, because grays and reptilians have learned to camouflage themselves and look like Nordics, etc. So there's a lot of deception out there. You have to understand that you're a spirit, you're a soul that has come into this sort of dimension to play this game, to be part of it, to contribute what your gifts are, and to suss out truth from falsity. So it's not served to you on a platter. It's basically something that you need to learn discernment. That's the game. That's the purpose of being here. So it is difficult. I can tell you, anytime a being, regardless of what shape, size, anything they are, tells you what to do, that's a negative oriented being. Anytime they say, oh, don't worry, we're going to come and take care of your president, get rid of him, we're going to come and take over your country and, make everything all better and get rid of war for you. And I have to say, if you haven't read Childhood Zen by Arthur C. Clarke, then I highly recommend it, because that's telling you what happens when a group of beings from another planet come in and tell you they're going to make everything all right. That's a takeover scenario. So it's really important to realize that we're not here to be rescued. We're going to be saving ourselves. That's also the game. So, it's kind of things like that. And if you're walking around going, oh, I hate it here, I can't wait to leave, you actually haven't gotten the message of why you came in the first place. Yeah. So you need to, backtrack a bit and understand that you as a soul made a very momentous decision to come here. You had a reason for coming here. Perhaps you wanted to share your truth with others and enhance your own ability to understand truth and falsity, and also become a better teacher so that you could go into the other dimensions and move on up in that way. And this is a great school I do believe in that philosophy of what Earth is. But there's more to it.
When it comes to the good and the bad and things like that, and I know that's just so cut and dry. Are you good or bad? Like there's no like in between. There's just tons of neutral, like you said, entities and spirits and vibrations, and there's just tons of different beings that are out there. That there's a bunch of neutrals ones. It's not just good or bad, or I want to harm you, or I want to bless you, or whatever the case is. So when we're kind of dealing with this idea. When we talk about the term abduction, I don't really hear that term anymore. I know when I was a kid back in the maybe the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but now everything I'm hearing now is I'm a contactee, I'm an experiencer. Is that by deception or is interaction changing?
There was always, it would depend on which beings you were dealing with, whether you were, sort of abducted or you were sort of a co-party in the situation, whether you were, for example, I would have visitations. At one point I had, I've told this story many times, but for the purposes of demonstration here, I spent all night talking to a little old man. He was very small, short, bald-headed old man who sat by my bed the whole night. He didn't abduct me or do anything to me, just sat in a chair next to my bed talking to me. And when I woke up, right before I woke up, I said, "Oh, wait a minute, where are you from?" And I was really happy I remembered to ask him, and he said Andromeda. So, that was, a contact experiencer kind of thing. On the other hand, like I said, I did have what I think are abduction like scenarios going on. So it's I think it's being politically whitewashed in a certain sense a lot, and I think that's dangerous. I think that I know that there's no doubt whatsoever that the Greys, certain as they call rogue groups of Greys, definitely abduct humans, and they have in massive quantities. It didn't stop. Some people think it stopped.
Yeah.
It's still going on. And, in the end, I am a believer that we're not victims. As souls, we agree to participate in certain things. They may be positive or negative. And there's a learning experience to be had there. There's also sometimes a gift that comes through the negative experience. Absolutely. So that you'll be able to share and understand other people's pain, and so it's that kind of thing. I don't see it as a one-way street when you have a negative experience.
You talked about the little being that looked like a little old man. Maybe that's just the way it appeared to you in the dream, but how tall was the little old man? I want to know that because I've had some weird encounters I haven't really talked about too much.
Well, I don't know, but I know that when I heard Alex Collier talk about he was visited by a little old man, bald-headed old man, and a very large, tall guy, and they were both from Andromeda. The little old man sounded just like the little old man that visited me, and this was before Camelot. So, but I don't know exactly how tall he is. I mean, I think he might have been like 4 feet tall or less, but I really don't know. He was, sitting down. I just saw him as a little old man. Now, I was disappointed at the time because when he told me he was from Andromeda, I was thinking, damn, he just looks so normal, just like a person. And I was hoping for some exotic, bizarre, being type thing. And in that case, it wasn't that way.
We talked a little bit about, what do you feel about Stephen Greer? And there's a lot of people out there that I feel are muddying the waters. There's so much fake YouTube stories, and then people share it for clickbait and fake videos that are 100% CGI, and people are just sharing it and stuff like that. And then there's all of these new people on the scene and stuff like that. How do you feel? Do you pick up on when you see somebody all over the place and they're like the new UFO guy, and you're like, you can read through them? Are you picking up any of that stuff as well?
Oh yeah, sure. It's interesting. We were just talking, a friend of mine and me, about Tom DeLonge and that whole effort. he's a new guy on the scene, and he had no interest in, contacting the people who actually spent their lives investigating this stories. When he put
never got an email from Tom DeLonge?
Sorry?
You never got an email from Tom DeLonge?
No, he won't speak to me. Actually, I have invited him to meet with the producer, but but no answer. So, I mean, I have no ill will towards these people, but I do know when they're doing things that are nefarious, etc. And the sighting that they talked about on his, Go to the Stars video or whatever that was according to some of my sources, it was actually one of ours. It was actually, there were several ships that I think there were like 20 ships or something, and it went on for a number of days, etc. And I know there's some interesting information out there that suddenly thinks that this was a balloon or something crazy. I mean, that's just muddying the waters further. Yeah. But I can tell you that after, like Rich Dolan has only dedicated his life and has like 3, very thick volumes of very well-researched sightings and encounters and so on with military, being involved with, policemen, large crowds, etc., very well documented. I mean, there's zillions and zillions of sightings. To choose one, and then for that one to be so questionable and to have happened 13 years ago is so fucking, it's just like so amazingly superficial and, I don't know, convenient. And then to find out, at least according to my sources, which are usually pretty right on, that this actually was a managed event and that they used that, and that it wasn't even actually, some of the footage looks like it was CGI indeed, and, so on. And so what are they doing? More lies to the public, under and sort of muddying the waters and making it harder for those of us who've really dedicated our lives to the subject. So it's not welcome. The way they're approaching it. Now, I know those people know exactly what they're talking about. I know they are from Black projects. I know those people are part of the secret space program, and so on. Again, I wrote to them. I basically, I've actually made videos in which I did a commentary. I've written articles about it. It's all on my website. It's on my YouTube channel, so you can, just put DeLonge into the search and you'll find these things. So, I've been commenting on that. Other people, that I have been in the part of the sector that I don't agree with, that's okay. I don't have to agree with other people. I don't mind. I think it's good that we disagree. But I think that there's a lot of dishonesty. I know there's a lot of people that appear to be working for the crowd, and they're actually working for the CIA, and part of the deception, and so on. So what can I tell you? Yeah. It's that kind of a playing field.
I don't know if I don't want to, cause I have a lot of different guests on the show. I try not to, I have my own opinions, and so I try not to just say, hey, watch out for this guy type deal, because I don't know 100% for sure that this guy is making it up. But I have my inklings about certain people that I'm just like, man, I see right through it. And I don't know if I should call their name. If I'm the TruthSeekah podcast, maybe we should, if we feel fishy, feel something's fishy.
So public, and because that particular sighting was questionable, I don't mind mentioning it. Again, I don't mind that he's joined the playing field. I don't mind that he does seem like he wants to get the truth out. Now, whether he's used and abused or doesn't know one sighting from another, and doesn't, has been told, oh, don't touch the people that are out there. They're, jaded, or they're whatever. In other words, you never know what side, what kind of disinfo he's been fed as well. But, in that case, generally speaking, unless somebody really is, I don't know, doing something extremely negative to the public, I'm not going to mention them. I don't think, I'm not interested in this interview in naming names of, perpetrators of various things. But I think, word to the wise in terms of, if you're going to make a big splash and you're going to bring a bunch of scientists and aerospace executives onto a stage, you're going to be talked about. And I think that's fair game.
Yeah, definitely. And especially when I seen him kind of come onto the scene, this is somebody I've been listening to his music since I was, 11 years old or so. So to hear somebody you've been listening to their music and now they're coming out into the same type of field that you're interested in, it's kind of cool. But then you see the information that he's bringing and the people he's working with, and it just kind of draws up a red flag. Let me ask you this though: is this the same Tom DeLonge from that's been working with Coast to Coast AM? Like at the very end of Coast to Coast AM, when it goes off, they tell you the producers and the underwriters, and they always name Tom DeLonge. They've been doing it for years. I know he's been into this.
We're talking about Tom Danheiser. That's
Tom
a different
Danheiser.
together.
Okay, so it's Tom Danheiser and Tom. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure. For some reason, I know he's been on Coast to Coast AM. Tom DeLonge back in the day, yeah, before he came out and did his big thing, what he did and all that stuff. But yeah, I've definitely been into.
Yeah, Coast to Coast won't talk to me. They told me, first of all, I was too much competition. Then they let me on accidentally for less than 15 minutes and hung up on me.
Yeah, when they found out it was you.
Got
Yeah.
scared. Yeah.
That's the weird thing. You would think that there would be more unity in the field, right? And there is a lot of unity, don't get me wrong, but you think that there would be more if there was like a common interest and an invested interest. But we find out that I think a lot of people are making it up. I think that other people have book deals and publishing deals, and they're making it up as we go. I've had a lot of contact experiences, and I've had it just mind-boggling that I've dedicated my life to this stuff. And I don't have half of the information that these people are talking about. Most of this stuff is muddy when you're coming out of those realms, or you're waking up in a dream and you felt something in your room and you're having all these encounters or whatever. But then these people have it down to a T. I think we're doing good to question it. I don't think we should follow anybody's teaching or books hook, line, and sinker. I think we should question it all and what remains. And once we take these other pieces of the puzzle and put them together, let me take Kerry Cassidy's piece, let me take Stephen Greer's piece, let me take Maxwell, everybody, put it together, and it eventually starts to make a little bit more sense. And some of the people who are making it up, or they're kind of falling to the wayside, or they're focusing on other things at the moment and they've kind of lost their interest or passion in it or whatever. So I appreciate you know what I'm saying, being here and doing what you're doing, and you've been someone who has stood the test of time over, threats and trolls and all of this stuff that you get by talking about this stuff early on. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because we're talking about like encouraging people to speak out about your experiences, but it kind of does come with a price, right?
Sure. But, I mean, I was sort of geared to be a public person because I simply knew I would when I was a very young person.
Yeah.
And I also studied acting in New York City for 4 years. And, I came back to Hollywood to be an actress, actually, and a director. My path didn't quite go I didn't spend a long time doing both of those things. I may return to it at a certain point. So, I was ready. I studied journalism, I was a journalist. So I have a background that sort of supports the kind of work I do. And that's been very valuable. Sure. I understand actually from past life experience as well, what it means to be a public person. So I was totally ready for what might come along. Some of the things, though, were kind of shocking. Like, I wasn't quite prepared to have people who I interviewed turn on me like a couple of weeks later and suddenly call me names and do all kinds of stuff when I've been nothing but kind to them. And that has happened has happened a lot. Actually, over the years, and that's been very bizarre. I've also been threatened by some of my witnesses. And, so those are things that were a little bit more advanced than just worrying about the public bad-mouthing you.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that the CIA and these NSA are paying trolls to really inundate my channel, which is why I don't have comments.
Yeah.
The trolls are just rampant.
Mm.
And they're really vicious. Some of them
Yeah.
are just out of their minds vicious.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them really are
Yeah.
freaking crazy.
100%.
And this sector does, encourage crazies. And also people get triggered. So even people that are relatively normal, when they hear someone talking about things that they're trying to bury,
Yeah.
and that they may have some very bad memories around, that can kind of, make them go crazy, I guess, or something. So, it's kind of a dangerous game that we're part of, but it's important. It's a life and death struggle to get, keep humanity going, to get the truth out. You basically, who cares whether somebody calls you names or lies about you and all that kind of crap? It's just, you kind of have to roll with the punches
You
and
got to get used to it because it
that's
doesn't
their
stop. Yeah, it doesn't stop.
Yeah, it's their deal. It's
Yeah.
not you. It's not your world. It's their world. They have an image of you in their head.
Yeah.
That image is not you. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And it's also, it's great to learn the kind of discernment against self-control, understanding, even, sort of patience and love with, these kids, these babies that are like, no idea what's going on and think that, the naivete is just deep. It's really deep.
Mm-hmm.
The
whole YouTube comment thing is outrageous, and I think I kind of like to silence their voice when they think that they can come upon your platform and use your platform to voice their opinion or whatever the case is. From dealing with the comments and things like that. I had a pastor comment on one of my videos the other day, and he just was kind of shooting me down or whatever, but I just responded like, why did the pastor feel the need to come on my channel and not show self-control and actually want to come on and make his voice heard? He's like a pastor of a church, but he had to come to my channel and voice his opinion. I was like, you didn't show self-control. Like, you need to practice that. And but it shows you, man, like, people are like, they want to get that last word in,
Yeah, it's just their problem. There's a lot of disturbed people. It's understandable living like we do. People are being lied to by their governments constantly. A big hurdle I've said in the past is, if a person isn't ready to accept the notion that their government is lying to them on a regular basis, then there's no way in hell they're going to, understand the stuff that we're talking about. That's a first hurdle. You have to understand that the people around you in these institutions have been fed lies their whole lives as well. And their sense of self, their sense of security is lodged in those institutions. So they're going to lie to you because it's their life and death struggle to just, keep their ego intact, I suppose. There's a lot of steps on the road to awakening and enlightenment, actually. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're on, a road to enlightenment, and this is all part of it.
I agree, Kerry. I'm gonna go to the phone lines here. We do have a caller here. Caller from California. Who we speaking with? Caller from California. Can you hear me? Okay. Maybe not. Anyway, if anybody wants to call in, the phone lines are open. We got a few minutes left. So if you have a question or you want to join the chat, make sure you go ahead and do that. Talking about the ETs and all of this stuff. And so you say you don't recommend people going out there and trying to make contact, right? Don't do that.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you try to call ships down, literally, the ships are often gray ETs, and the grays a lot of them are very service to self. Now, there are some more positive, even recovering grays, I guess, but it's going to be a few and far between. So, if it's like, first of all, a lot of the beings that are on the positive side that will try to contact you will contact you because you're ready and you have an openness. It's not like you have to sit there and pray for them to show up. They'll just be there. It's, it's kind of like understanding that communication is a two-way street. And you don't have to, I don't know. It's kind of like you don't have to do anything. You just have to be, and these things will come into your midst. It's more difficult to stop communication with the various beings and ETs and ghosts and you name it than it is to initiate it, because we're part of this incredible milieu of beings, of billions and billions of Earth-like planets. Scientists are even telling you now. So what do you think? Are a few of those races coming here to say hi and to get involved? I mean, and it's just we're communicators. It's all about communication. We're telepathic. We're psychic. It's all out there. It's right here. It's not, miles away. It's not called down a ship because, to have them come visit you, because why? So you can walk on a ship and say you did. I mean, it's not about that. It's not a like going on a Ferris wheel or a roller coaster. It's not about that. It's a much more normal thing. And if you are if you are Leoline, then the cat beings will be attracted, and you will be already part of a cat being network, and so on and so forth. And if you're related to Greys, well, they're going to probably show up somewhere somehow. And if your family line has been infiltrated and so on and so forth, if you volunteered and don't remember that you did, to be messed with, in the end, as far as I'm concerned, whether it's AI or it's another being or whatever it is, our spirit, our soul is being given the challenge of understanding that we can surmount all of it. It doesn't matter if they enhance you. In the end of the day, you're still going to be your consciousness, and your consciousness is going to interact with whatever that package is. It may have more difficulty making direct contact with you. You may be more interfered with, but again, this will be a choice. What we need to do, in my view, is understand the power of spirit and the power of soul to transcend all of it. So that's kind of what it's all about. It's like educating yourself. I think of like Quentin Tarantino and all his movies, and a lot of these super violent movies where they just are killing people over and over again and all this kind of stuff. And I think they're like children that want to believe that death is the end. They want to prove to themselves that death is not the end, so they just kill people over and over and over again. Humans are kind of like that in their movies and in their lives in some ways. You can't kill the soul. It's eternal. Yeah. You can't kill the spirit, It's part of the creator. So, we're all part of that. So you can't kill it. And when humans realize you can't kill it, it's just going to take another form and come back again. They'll stop killing each other. They'll stop killing anything, because it's not going to work. It doesn't work.
That's good. That's a good way to look at that, man. And the Kill Bill franchises and all the death and destruction out there. So trying to cope with their own mortality, essentially. What they feel to be trapped in that body, and this fear of death, the fear of dying. Couple more calls here. We'll jump to we got a caller calling from Michigan. Who we speaking with?
This is all it is from Michigan. What's up, TruthSeekah? Hi, Kerry.
Hey, what's going on, brother? Hey, man, I want to say nice video, brother. Your new video was awesome, bro.
Thank you so much. I had to take this synchronicity that seems to be happening and take a chance to call in and say hi to Kerry, who's one of my biggest influences in just this area. And just thank you so much, Kerry, for everything you do. You truly are a warrior for this community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
The only question I had was just on bringing it back a little bit to Greer and the abductions and stuff like that. And if, of course, nothing's all positive, nothing's all negative. But does she think that some of the abductions are from the secret space program or branches of that? And if that continues, and that some of the abductions that are accounted for could be the secret space program? And yeah, I was just curious about her thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, actually, that's what a MyLab is. A military abduction would be the secret space program abducting you, and absolutely.
It gets pretty interesting when we start talking about that with the MyLab. For anybody who's never heard that term, it's military induced abductions, right? Is that the correct terminology?
Sounds about right.
Close enough. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So, brother, thanks for calling. All it is, we actually I have a song coming out with him shortly. It's going to be on his next project. So yeah, man, thanks for checking in with me. Got another caller here from Central Coastal California. Who we speaking with?
I'm going to go by the name of Michael on this call, if that's okay.
That's fine. What's going on, Michael?
Yeah, I want to say hi to Kerry. I got the opportunity to meet Kerry in person in Cottonwood several months ago at a conference. And she was one of the first people that I followed several years ago when I first started doing my own personal research. And I just want to say that I support Kerry 100%. We've never actually had a sit-down conversation. I hope to actually meet her and talk to her possibly even tomorrow because I'm in Los Angeles right now. I just finished with the Conscious Life Expo. I just want to make a comment that anyone's listening that I have a lot of compassion for and empathy for Kerry because I'm a researcher and I see the political situation. I see where certain people's information is suppressed, I'll say. That it's not, you're not invited to the party unless you're bringing the same Kool-Aid that everybody else is drinking. If you have a Kool-Aid that's just a little too intense for maybe certain people to deal with, or maybe there's an organization out there, I don't know what letter, 3 letters we want to apply to them, but there are definitely, and I'm 100% confident about this, there are groups out there that are spreading disinformation and trying to suppress the real truth because they want to give us this disclosure. But in my opinion, it's kind of a fake disclosure. And what I mean by that is there's much more important information other than just flying saucers flying in the air. So they want to feed us this little flying saucer scenario. But what Kerry's discovered, and she's traveled the world, she's talked to people that actually, when I listen to her interviews, it helps me immensely because it helps put the puzzle together. So I suggest strongly anybody that's doing their own research, you need to include Kerry Cassidy's work in your portfolio of research.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, Michael, you have a question?
Is there any possibility before I hang up here, Kerry? I've been tweeting with you, but I didn't have a chance to follow up. But if I'll send you a tweet after this conversation, if there's any chance I can meet with you while I'm here in Los Angeles, I'm going to go to the UFO Congress in a day or two.
Oh, I see.
I'll send you.
Okay, it's possible. We'll see.
Yeah, I'll just say we can talk about it. I understand that you're very busy and you've got to be careful who you spend your time with. I totally respect that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Michael, thanks for calling, brother. As you'll be known on this phone call. Another caller from Central Colorado. Who we speaking with?
Hey, what's up, TruthSeekah family? This is Matty Eyes.
Matty, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, brother? I just wanted to come out, reach out to Kerry Cassidy, and thank her so much for being part of this community. We need more people that are like-minded and open-minded and can make their own decisions. I had a quick question for her. It's considering back when Project Camelot first came out, she had a thing on there where she was interviewing a lot of super soldiers from all over the country. It was about 10 years, maybe 7 years ago. And I had a question about a gentleman named Max Heiser. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but from what I've gathered, this guy was a super soldier and he disappeared recently. And people are speculating that he got murdered. So I kind of wanted a little bit more information from her, especially since she interviewed him, and get a little bit more depth on that.
Sure. I've done a lot of videos about him, actually about his death, and interviewed Miles Johnston. I also did a lot of research and was in touch with the filmmaker who filmed his last, video and was literally on the phone with him. And on the other line was the woman that witnessed his death, who he died on her couch, Monica. And so I did some of my own research in that area. Max Spears was apparently quite a smart guy, and he had sort of moved from being a super soldier to being more of a whistleblower towards the end of his life. And I think that, you know, he was killed. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. There were some very nefarious things that went on with all of it. But the best thing to do would be to search his name on my YouTube channel to get a lot of the information on videos, because it goes on quite extensively. And I'm not the only one who researched this. And so the one thing I can say that's very sad is that the woman who actually owns several magazines in, I forget which, I think it was, I forget whether it was Poland or Czechoslovakia, one of those, where he was in her mansion and died. She never came out and did what she said she would do, which is say what happened. Now, I don't know if she'd tell the truth anyway, but it's, you know, it's a mystery, definite mystery. And I think his mother.
Right. Well, it sounds like he did get assassinated. But a follow-up question to that real quick is I know you've interviewed a couple super soldiers in your past, and I've also heard speculations that some of them have been faking it or maybe creating an illusion that they were super soldiers and it actually came out that they weren't. As far as you know, do you have any information on any of those people that Project Camelot did interview that might possibly be faked?
No, the people I interviewed were real. Now, a lot of people misunderstand the term super soldier. They don't understand. It's kind of a slang for a soldier that's more or less altered, and you can be, you know, enhanced psychically. You can have implants in your body. You can be, you know, it's a transhuman sort of spectrum. So there can be all kinds of advancements going on, etc. And the super soldiers I've interviewed are legitimate.
Okay, all right. Thank you. One last question for you. As far as Trump's administration goes and where this country is going, what do you foresee in the near future as far as things happening in the global realm? As far as I know, there's a lot of people who come out and said that there will be a fake alien invasion after there's global unrest. I just wanted to get your quick input and opinion on that, and I'll drop call.
Okay. Well, Project Bluebeam has been talked about for many, many years. Actually, I think it's less and less likely as time goes on, simply because, the ETs are here. It's kind of, I always think of it as, you know, if you're going to throw a play and, you know, all the people are already there and you're going to, you know, it's like they're not going to just sit quietly while this goes on. So there's so many various races visiting us and, you know, walking among us, so to speak, like Bob Dean would say, the Anunnaki walking the halls of the Pentagon, etc. So I don't think it's going to be that easy for them to do a Project Bluebeam. You'd need a more naive populace out there. I think the good thing about Camelot and a lot of the people that are out there, like TruthSeekah and various people, that, you know, it's, if you don't know that ET is real at this point, you know, you've had your head in the sand for God knows how long. So, I mean, this is my perspective, you know, but Spielberg's Close Encounters was ages ago. So all I can tell you is, you know, that they may fake it, but it's going to be real anyway. So it's kind of like, we don't live in a isolated bubble. We actually have a lot of comings and goings, and any kind of barrier to entry has been removed. We are really now, you know, face forward and part of this community out there. And it's like a free for all for all intents and purposes here on planet Earth and off the planet. So see my interviews with Captain Mark Richards of the Secret Space Program to get more of just how incredible and complex this whole game is. But, that's
Okay, well, thank you very much for your input, Kerry. I really appreciate that. You've been an inspiration for me since even before 2012, even when I've just started waking up. So I appreciate that you're on with TruthSeekah, and you guys have a great night.
Awesome, brother. Thanks for calling in. A pre-2012er. Thanks for calling, brother. That's Maddie,
right,
Maddie calling in from the top of Pinecrest, as it says here. Thanks for calling in, brother. All right, I'm going to try to go back to this call in California. Call from California. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. You have a question for Kerry?
Hello? I'm actually, no, I'm just listening right now. Thank you, though.
All right. Yeah, man.
Appreciate
Thanks for
it.
listening. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's all, I can't lie. I always get scared taking the calls because I don't have a call screener anymore. But it's always like you get the people calling in, cursing and screaming. So we've been lucky tonight. So maybe that's the last call. I think we're good. So there's a question in the chat from a good friend of mine who watches the show, is a supporter, Adam Starseed Bay. And he's trying to call. He's having some problems calling. But he says, ask her what she knows. And this is always his go-to question for a lot of guests. He wants to get to the bottom of this. Ask her what she knows about Antarctica and why it is such a protected and sacred place.
Well, I know lots of bits and pieces about Antarctica. Probably no one knows the full story except the people that are running the place. I can say that, I have been told by a deep source that Antarctica is what it is in part because it is kind of impossible to get there without going certain ways and through New Zealand, et cetera, et cetera. So you can be tracked, and it's also a very forbidding kind of environment, at least on the surface. You don't get into the sort of natural part of it if you don't go sort of under the ice and so on. And so it's like the perfect place to go, I'm told, for ETs and humans to meet, where they won't be surveilled by any enemies of that group that is running that place. So it's also apparently tracking incoming objects from the South Pole. If I understand it, the telescopes down there have a good view of our solar system and incoming and outgoing traffic. So Solar Warden, I'm sure, is orchestrated in large part from there. It's a huge mixed bag. I mean, watch my interview with William Tompkins to get the 411 on a lot of what's going on in Antarctica, how it factored in the secret space program from day one. We had also a witness who was an escapee from New Berlin down there. And he was talking about the crazy stuff going down there, and so on. So, like I said, it's just another good secret place for them to have. I mean, there's so many of them, but there does seem to be some kind of command and control center down there. Can't say exactly, much more about it than that, but, it seems to be the case. And I think it's run by an off-planet civilization for the most part. I do think that John Kerry went to report down there, and various other leaders have done so at strategic moments in our history. One person I found out recently that was involved in the Kennedy assassination, for example, went down there during that time. So this is, this has been going on quite a long time. And of course, the Nazis were very involved and have a base down there and so on.
Has Kerry Cassidy got into Flat Earth?
Well, I have written something about it. So I guess if you search under Flat Earth on my website, you can find it. But I'll basically say my philosophy about that, which is that in a sense, we live in a hologram anyway, and we are 3D moving into 4D. My dog is saying hello.
Oh, he's beautiful. I finally get a chance to see him. Wow.
Yeah, someone said I should show my dog because she's a puppy, but she's learning. So anyway, what was I saying?
Flat Earth.
Oh, flat Earth. And so it's, even Ashiana Dean talks about these plates, and I use the word planet. So a planet is a plane, and it's a net. It captures people. It captures you. You're captured by the planet you live on. And it's a plan. It's a net with a plan, and it's a plane. So anyway, there's this aspect of 4D coming into 3D at this time. And 4D is a horizontal, endless plane. It's the way it's visualized. And so this is what we're moving into. We're moving out of 3D, in my view, and very much into 4D more and more. And that's why we're dealing with so many of the beings from 4D. And 4D is all about group to group interaction. So I think what's happening is that people are kind of, we live in a hologram anyway. Nothing is really solid. We are spirit first, material second. So it's important to understand that what appears physically, solid, like a table, this table, if you can vibrate at the right speed, you can go in between these and actually, go through the table. So, it's like men who stare at goats, etc. So I understand all the weird stuff that goes on. I have heard about it and looked into it. And even this latest thing with Elon Musk in the car and how bizarre everything looks, and how they're showing the Earth, and why is it circling constantly? I thought it was on the way to Mars. Why doesn't it just drive there straight? And there's so many weird things that they lie to us about. I'm with everyone on that, and I can say that one of the things is, when they show you, like in Antarctica, they show you a flag that's supposed to go every so often, and then all of a sudden the camera breaks, and then they don't show you anymore. I mean, this goes on constantly. So yes, they're hiding stuff. Do we live in a flat Earth? No. I believe that the spiral, the circle, the sort of the dimensional, in this dimension, we live on a round circle, a globe, so to speak. And, our head is a globe. This is kind of how it works. There are the basics, the platonic solids, etc. So I don't think flat Earth is exactly what it is. But I do think that there are lies about what's being shown to us and what isn't, and why we can't see certain things in space, and why you never see the stars, when you're in a spaceship, and all this kind of weird stuff. I mean, it seems my answer to that is, of course, that there are ET craft, gigantic ones, that we are so not alone, and etc. But I see it in a more dimensional way. I think it would be the best way to explain it. I don't see it as, as far as I'm concerned, these walls and everything around us is an illusion anyway. I'm very much a believer in the sort of, I guess you'd call it, the Eastern philosophy.
Hermetic principles, vibration, things like that. Mm-hmm.
So, and who cares, in the end? I mean, I realize that.
Marginalize your fan base over flat Earth. And that's what
it's
I've
a
seen.
game. If it works for you to think of it that way, to kind of get into the 4D mindset and to think of it that way, I think that's what's happening to people's minds. I really do. That's why it's come back to the fore.
I do too.
There's
another question here, and this is kind of a two-part question, one for this person, one for me. It says, ask if the aliens that people see on hallucinogenic trips are real. Serious question. Like you taken in tribal ceremony. So my question is, are these entities that people are interacting with, do you think they're real? Number two, have you had a ayahuasca ceremony or psilocybin mushroom encounter?
Yes, I think they're real. Well, I can say that I can't go into a lot of detail, but I did live in Woodstock, New York, for a little while, and got involved in the music business there when I was quite young. And I was caretaking a house on a hill in the town of Woodstock, the real Woodstock. And Sky, stop it. And something visited me there. And I had been given I think it was some kind of peyote button thing. And, I haven't done a lot of drugs in my life, but that was one time when someone said, oh, try it. I was young, I tried it. And there was this really kind of horrible green being that I woke up and was like trying to, get on top of me or something. And I like screamed and, it disappeared. So I think they're real. I think these, it's reptilians. There are a lot of reptilians are totally interdimensional beings. They're going into the fourth dimension, and they're coming here. They can only be here temporarily. On the other hand, some of them have been, going in and out of this dimension forever. And, and I think if you look at the work of Graham Hancock, you'll see that he was very much into ayahuasca and had visitation, and so on. So, yeah, they're as real as anything else. They're as real as we are. What does that mean? We're more.
I like that. What kind of dog do you have?
Oh, she's called a Swiss Shepherd, and I researched to decide what kind of dog to get. And she's like a shepherd, but not as heavily built bone structure. And she's often used in police work in the UK. And they're very beautiful and lovely and extremely intelligent.
I have a wolf and husky mix, and it looks a lot similar to yours. And it was funny because you said her name is Sky, right? Mine's name's Star, so it's actually Hoshi, which is Chinese for star. So that's interesting. Looks a lot like them.
So, well, I should probably get going. You said this is drawing to close, yeah?
Yes. One last question. What does a jaguar mean to you? We always see the iconic Project Camelot jaguar. What does that mean to you?
I used to write poetry and rock and roll songs, and Jaguar is a song that I wrote and produced with one of my ex-husband, actually, and who's a rock and roller. And let's see, what can I tell you? The Jaguar, I didn't even know it when I wrote the lyrics. I hadn't really researched it. It came to me sort of in a vision, and I got the whole set of lyrics all together and everything. So if you listen, but it's basically interdimensional portal, and it symbolizes that to the South American cultures.
Yes.
So
wow.
It ended up to be the perfect song for Camelot.
Yeah, definitely, and especially when it's dealing with, like we're talking about the ayahuasca, they talk about going into those realms and encountering the jaguar beings.
And I love big cats, so
yeah, beautiful. Well, Kerry Cassidy, thank you so much. I enjoyed spending this time with you. We have to do it again sometime soon. My hat's off to you. Thank you so much. If you want to plug your work, if there's anybody out there who have no idea who you are, if you want to plug your work where people can check out Project Camelot and your work, you can go ahead and do that.
You can go to projectcamelotportal.com, projectcamelot.tv, or projectcamelot.org. We've had to have more than one URL because in some countries we're being blocked. We specialize on with whistleblowers from above, top secret, and secret space. So
Kerry Cassidy,
visit my website and watch my videos. I've got like 600 or it's closer to 700 videos now on YouTube. I've got a massive channel, 56 million or 57 million viewers, unique views. And I think my subscribers are somewhere around 186 or 7,000.
Good stuff, Kerry. Quick question. Is your channel backed up? Do you have your videos on an external hard drive or somewhere saved?
Of course.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with me, Kerry. I appreciate you.
All right. I appreciate you, and take care. Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yes. Kerry Cassidy, ladies and gentlemen. The Kerry Cassidy. I enjoyed being a guest on her show. She had me on. If you guys have not seen that episode, go to her channel and watch the video. Type in TruthSeekah on her search, and you'll see that interview that we did there. Enjoyed talking to her. Like I said, there's a few people, and if you want me to go down the list, I probably can, but there's probably 10 people who are just influential in my life, and I'm doing what I'm doing now, the music and the podcast and the research, and have given my life to pursue this work and this material. Kerry Cassidy is one of them. She is definitely one of them. Project Camelot. Many of you guys who are hanging out now in the chat room, you guys know because she has made an impact on your life. So with that being said, there wouldn't be a TruthSeekah podcast. There wouldn't be many other little shows popping up and people speaking with confidence on these type of subjects if there wasn't a Project Camelot. As far as I'm concerned, you know, David Wilcock and many of these people who they kind of used Project Camelot as to be propelled with their careers essentially to where they are now, because that was just a huge platform when there wasn't a whole plethora of shows to watch. Now, like if you're watching this on YouTube, there's probably a ton of videos going down the side, you guys watching this live, of different videos you can watch concerning spirituality and aliens, and everybody's an expert on the subject. But I'm telling you, just a few years ago, there wasn't many people doing it. Kerry Cassidy was one of them. My hat is off to her. Thank her and Bill Ryan for the work that they've contributed and the work that she is still doing. She's still going. It's not over yet. So, Kerry Cassidy, thank you. One thing she was talking about, the Elon Musk thing and seeing the SpaceX or whatever and that car. That thing looks like CGI, and it's not good at all. And I think he released a statement and he says that the reason it looks fake is because it's real, or if it, you know what I'm saying, that because it looks fake, therefore that must mean that it's real, because they could have did a better job, right, with better CGI and better stuff like that. I don't know, that's insane. If you haven't seen it, it doesn't look real, I'll say that. But it is interesting to note. Now I know I'm going to mess this up, but the one of the Apollo missions where they was supposed to pan back and film the Earth through the window, it's interesting to note, and there's extra footage that shows this, and they admitted it, but instead of pointing the camera out the window and filming the Earth as they're leaving the Earth, supposedly, they hold up a cardboard with a hole cut in the center of it, and they put that up against the window, and they film the cardboard to show this perfect circle in the middle, and it looked like it was the Earth, but then at the end you can see them move the cameras away and pull the cardboard away, and supposedly they admitted it. This is interesting. It's interesting. Why would they do these things? Something's going on. Like I said, you guys aren't an hour and 30 minutes into this podcast, into this episode, if you didn't know that something was happening. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't trust many people who do, put it that way, to be an expert, but we know we have something. Like, we have something to bring to the table. Kerry Cassidy has something to bring. I think Jordan Maxwell, I think Stephen Greer, I think all these people have something to bring to the table, a piece of the puzzle, and as we put it together, it begins to formulate a picture. So all of this stuff interests me. I've had my own experiences, and this is what we do. TruthSeekah podcast. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you guys for supporting my work over there on Patreon. Every Thursday night, we are doing the roundtable discussion on the School of the Mystics. So anybody who's looking for community, anybody who's looking to get plugged in with what we're doing, those who are supporting on Patreon, you get access to the School of the Mystics as well. Anywhere from $1 a month. To whatever you're supporting at, you get access there. So Thursday nights, School of the Mystics, 7 p.m. If you head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah, you also get extra podcast. You get my full discography. It's like 10 plus albums of hip hop music and esoteric spirituality, everything that essentially what I've been learning from those type of research and podcasts and stuff, and having in my own encounters, articulating it and putting it into a song. That's what I do music about. It's so cool that a lot of people who listen to my podcast now, there's so many new people coming on, they don't even know that I do music. So it's cool now that like I said, at the beginning it was people who were fans of my music, they would in turn listen to the podcast just because they like the music and they like what I'm about or whatever. But now there's a lot of new people coming into my work and what I do simply because of the podcast. So all of you guys, I'm going to say shalom, peace, welcome to the fold, welcome to the podcast. Click that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Also, in the description, we do the podcast is on iTunes, it's on Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that good stuff. Make sure you subscribe to my channel there. So, patreon.com/TruthSeekah to support. There's a bunch of ways to support in the in the description. And so I couldn't do this without you guys. I go as far to say that I wouldn't do this without you guys. Thank you guys for the support. 2018 is off to a great start, man. We're doing big things, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys. With that, I'm going to say good night and shalom. Thank you for everybody hanging out in the chat room. All of my regular people over there, people checking us out. Jim Gerard, what's up, my brother? Yeah, I just interviewed him the other day. If you guys haven't seen that interview, go listen to that one. Christy Lee, Maddie Jui, Mati, everybody over there. Adam Starseed, Catherine Marsh, Lil T, No Leon. Man, all of these familiar names holding it down for me in the chat room. And what's really cool is when, you know, you got family. When I was able to be interviewed on her podcast, all of you guys were in the chat over there holding it down for me on Project Camelot as well. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. Peace and shalom. I love each and every one of you guys. With that, we're going to do it again. A lot more coming. Stay tuned.
Your way so much higher than mine. So much higher than mine. So much deeper than mine. So much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.